Ivanka Trump has now testified before the January 6th committee. The former president's daughter and advisor answered questions for nearly 8 hours. She was with her father at the rally before the assault on the Capitol and in the Oval Office throughout the attack. ABC's Katherine Faulders is live on Capitol Hill for us with more on this. Katherine, good to see you, friend. So we know the committee has been trying to piece together 8 hours of phone logs missing from the White House official records. Do we know if Ivanka Trump's testimony fills in some of those gaps?
Yeah, look, her testimony was very important to this committee. Now, while we're told she answered questions in kind of broad brushstrokes, at least according to the committee chairman, they did keep her in there, as you said, for nearly 8 hours. Now, her testimony is important for many reasons. You mentioned those phone logs, that more than 7 hours of gaps in those White House phone logs that were missing. Well, she comes into play here because she was with Trump in the Oval Office and in the West Wing throughout the day here. So not only can she piece together those phone records, Kenneth, she can also piece together his state of mind, Trump's state of mind during that time. Who was trying to reach him? What was he doing? She was also one of those people who was urging Trump to essentially call off the violence. You remember that video that he released, that the former president released finally on Twitter. She had conversations about that video and was weighing in there as well. So her testimony important, but at the same time, it's unclear how much investigators gleaned from her testimony. Again, broad answers. And also they said she didn't invoke any executive privilege or the Fifth in any way. So there's still a lot to learn from her testimony, but it comes as her husband, Jared Kushner, spent hours with the committee last week.
Yeah, interesting she did not invoke executive privilege there, because we know that's not the case for a number of other Trump aides or former Trump aides. Speaking of that, the House is set to vote to ask the DOJ to charge former Trump aides Dan Scavino and Peter Navarro with contempt for ignoring congressional subpoenas for records and testimony. Katherine, tell us about this and what's expected of this vote and why it's happening here.
Yeah, so this vote here is minutes away, and after the House votes, they essentially refer this contempt report over to the Department of Justice. And then, look, it's in DOJ's hands whether to decide to charge Scavino and Navarro. But look, Navarro is important. Maybe not a name that you've heard too much, right? He served as Trump's trade advisor in the White House, but he also authored this report about why he believed Trump could overturn the election. And he said, Navarro said in his book, that Trump then distributed this report to all Republican members of Congress. So they want to hear more from Navarro on that. He was involved in these discussions with state legislatures as well. And Dan Scavino, look, you probably heard a little bit more about Dan Scavino. He was essentially the only other person that had access to Trump's Twitter account. He was there by his side constantly. And the committee has said in a report that they've uncovered evidence that Scavino placed multiple calls to Trump that day and that they were talking often. So they think that his testimony is important as well. Now, it could, look, once it's in DOJ's hands, it could drag on for months, depending on what they decide.
But Katherine, you know, again, we've seen this before when it comes to the stonewalling by former Trump aides. And that leads me to Mark Meadows, the former chief of staff for the Trump White House. He was held in contempt after a vote in Congress back in December, but still no movement from DOJ. Do we know the latest on that?
And lots of frustration from members of the committee over that. You heard them vocalize that support in contempt proceedings last week. Look, Meadows is a bit different than Steve Bannon, for example, who has been charged by the Department of Justice. He'll have a trial this summer. But Meadows, perhaps, potentially, has some executive privilege claims. He was the chief of staff to the former president. That could be the reason why DOJ has been slower on that. At least some legal scholars have been speculating as much. It also could be that his attorneys are in talks with the Department of Justice over a potential deal. Again, none of that is clear or transparent at this point, and the committee is frustrated by that. But at the same time, a lot of legal experts who we've spoken to suggest maybe that could be the case.
That frustration you mentioned, especially by some Democrats, Attorney General Merrick Garland has faced criticism for the pace of the DOJ's investigation. But Katherine, you know, sources recently told us that this probe is expanding to include preparations for the rally that was held before the attack. So how significant is that?
Yeah, we reviewed one of these grand jury subpoenas that was sent to multiple people in terms of expanding this investigation. And look, it's significant because the Department of Justice has been engaged in the largest criminal probe, frankly, in DOJ history. But what the expansion tells us is they're not just investigating the violence at the Capitol that day. They also want to know about that rally before that, the Save America rally, where the former president spoke. They want to know about the organizing. They want all the communications surrounding the organizing of it. And they want to know about the financing of it. And just to underscore how broad this is, Kenneth, the subpoena that we reviewed essentially asks for all communications of any member of the executive, legislative branch, or employee in the federal government as it relates to this rally, the organizing of that Save America rally.
And it is interesting, as you know, Catherine, that if there are Democrats who are criticizing the DOJ and the pace of that investigation, we know on Capitol Hill, where you are, the Democrats are in charge of that House Select Committee, and they're trying to wrap up dozens of witness interviews in the coming weeks. What else and who else do they want to hear from, and where does this investigation go from here?
Yeah, we know that they continue having those closed-door depositions every day up here. They're likely to continue when the House and the Senate leave for recess. But look, we know, and we reported exclusively today, that they're hearing from former Trump lawyer Eric Hirschman. Now, he was engaged in a lot of these discussions behind the scenes in the White House, especially when the White House counsel's office wanted to remain out of this. So he is currently behind closed doors talking to the committee. It was interesting because we heard Chairman Thompson say earlier this week on Monday that he does plan to issue more subpoenas, but he did concede that the committee is unlikely to subpoena former Vice President Mike Pence. Now, that indicates to me through my sources and reporting on this that conversations have essentially broken down as it relates to the former vice president. They were negotiating over some sort of cooperation, but now the committee says that they don't need him. So we will see some more interviews. That lawyer, Eric Hirschman, today is important. But look, they continue over the next few weeks here, Kenneth, and then we're going to move into the public version of these hearings.
Our Katherine Faulders there on Capitol Hill with some great reporting. Follow her on Twitter, Faulders, everyone. Thank you. We appreciate it, Fred.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.